Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, just wanted to do a real quick transfer window overview for you. So, there's a reason why I don't do any sort of transfer special type video. The two reasons for that. The first reason is because usually most of the players that we get in wind up earlier than the transfer deadline date, the big players, that is. And the second one is because most of the time I'm just buying really young players who have some potential. So, as you can see here, we were the biggest spenders in our division, though not the biggest in China. Beijing outspent us almost by 2-1 margin. Don't know quite where all that money's coming from for them. And we brought in, as it says here, minus 55 players, which tells me that we have probably exceeded the number of players that the game thought we'd bring in. I know that we brought in over 200 players this season, and 113 went out. So we'll talk about the players that went out first. We have 107 players out on loan, which is where this one has wound up. This includes some people who are somewhat known names here that we've played in the past. George Hall, for example, got really upset, and so we decided to go ahead and put him out on loan instead of having him in the first team squad. We also, let's see if I can find him here. Let's see here. Rafael is another one who has played in the first team squad on occasion, not quite good enough to play for the first team squad right now. We put him out on loan to Dalian Shida. Kwon Hyo Kyu is over with Havre Se over in Denmark, I believe, and he's going to leave the club here pretty soon. I think we have a little tack on at the end of that one. We also have Kim Yong-il, who is another well-known player here from our prior matches and last season. He hasn't been playing quite good enough. He's on loan over there at Quinshan, who are paying a huge amount of his wages for us, which is perfectly fine. We could have afforded keeping him on if we really wanted to. He also has a tack on as well. And there are a number of others, like Adrian Quinn played for a little while. We have him over in Hamilton and Scotland, where he probably belongs, not playing so well there. Gustavo Rico, of course, is with April 25th over in North Korea, as is a number of other young players who we kind of want to keep sitting around until somebody comes and buys them off of us. Basically, that's what that part of the thing looks like. Now, when we go over to transfers and our transfer history, because we bought so many players, it doesn't quite fit here in the transfer in list. So this is actually not a complete list, believe it or not. I mean, we could look up youth and it's going to tell me nothing, even though the vast majority of these players were youth. So I think the easiest way to look at this is just go over to our under 19s and you'll get sort of an idea from here. I can't really scroll down. Oh, I can here at the beginning now. I was going to say usually it takes a little while for it to load everything up. So this is the story of our under 19 players, and as you can see, we have a huge number of players who are 17 and 16 and 15 years old. Usually, actually, when they're 17, I try to put them on the under 21 squad. Then the computer has them available for the under 19 squad. I just let the computer figure all that out because we have so many players here. I mean, how many do we have? Is it even going to allow me to figure this out? If we just look at players who are 15 and 16, we have 134. And that gives you kind of an idea of where our transfers were really focused and what the idea is here. So the idea, obviously, is that we want to get as many good quality players as we possibly can. As always, I mark the players who are inconsistent, like this guy, Dongmin Chen, and I give them a little mark so that I know that, so that if something comes up in the future, I know, hey, I don't really want to start this guy in the first team squad. This guy, by the way, most of these players who have these little flags on them are players that were created by the club here at club, so it cost us nothing. But for somebody like Dongmin Chen, who is showing as 2.4 million to 5.5 million potential, we're not just going to like dump this guy off. And so we're going to do what we can to develop him, hopefully get him over the under 21 squad, and then get him out on loan. The idea is that we will loan him out to some other team that will help with his development, and eventually we'll be able to sell him without ever having him play a game for our first team squad. Same goes with these guys who are unambitious and stuff like that. I mean, whatever. We don't really want to have a whole bunch of guys with really bad personalities around here. In the future, going forward, after doing this huge thing where we have just this absolute, wealth of talent here on the club, what we're going to do in the future is we're going to focus more on personalities. So the trick with Football Manager is you want to get your ambition, your professionalism, your determination levels on players as high as possible. As you can see, I mean, I can't see any of those things here because we don't have any attributes on at all. It doesn't matter what I look at. We're not going to be able to see, like Dongmin Chen, what his determination is like. That might be different for you if you're not playing the game here in hardcore, no attributes mode. If you play the game with attributes on, then yeah, obviously you're going to be able to look and see what his determination is like, and you can then make a determination yourself as to whether you want to hold on to him or not. Without that on, I really rely heavily on personality. The things that we're looking for are players who are model citizens or model professionals or perfectionists or just professionals. If we can't have that, and frequently we can't, we will go for some of these other personalities. Fairly professional is good. Fairly ambitious is all right. Ambitious and determined are okay, but we care a little bit more about professionalism than anything else. Let's see if I can find another one here. That's a good one. Actually, I can't. Spirited is okay. That's another one where you're like, okay, well, we could do that. That has at least the potential of having good professionalism levels. In general, though, the players that we really, really want to see are these ones who have good professionalism levels. I care more about that than really what their talent level is necessarily, because I want to have as many professional players as I can. What you'll find when you try to do when you try to do transfers like this is you'll have a whole bunch of players who will come on, and it'll tell you that they're operating at the level the level below where you're at, the previous level. You get this potential ability, could improve a lot, doesn't really tell you much. Maybe this guy would have 3-star potential. I don't know what it would look like in terms of star ratings. It's hard to tell. Sometimes the computer will tell you might not have the required ability or potential. That might be sort of a deal breaker for you. For me, I don't really care. I don't care what letter grading the scouts give it or anything like that. What I care about the most is that personality and the fact that he's not really inconsistent and that he's not extremely injury prone. Those are the things I care about. Those are the players who very likely are going to advance to the top of the game and will eventually play for our first team squad. Here is Li Yue, who is very similar. Another player, I don't know how much we got him for, 1.3 million, right, from Chengdu Rongcheng. And he is another one who, so he's a young prospect way off of first team level, which means he's not quite a 3-star player yet, but there's a better chance that he'll end up getting in the squad in the end. Can't quite play for the squad yet, but he's performing well in training, is professional, and because he's professional and has a good level of professionalism, he'll probably be able to develop just fine on his own. So that's the sort of thing that you look for, and that's sort of the idea. The ideal, as I've said before, is that with our first team squad, eventually we want to make sure that we only have 20 or fewer foreign players on the squad as much as possible. We want to get a lot of these younger players developed so that they can feature for the first team squad. That way later on when we're playing in the European Champions League and other places like that, we have players who are homegrown at club and homegrown in nation, which will help with our registration requirements, and that way we're also not entirely dependent upon foreign players to come over and play well for us. It's going to take a while. It's not very easy to make this happen, but if we push hard, we should be able to make it work. And I'm not quite sure what he's showing up as unavailable. That was kind of odd. Anyway, so that's the whole idea behind this. That's kind of the thing that we want to focus on. And yeah, he should be available. That was really weird. Whatever. That's the whole idea behind doing this. That's the thing that we really want to focus on. And that's kind of the theory that's going to drive us here in the future. I would say to you, don't be worried about this. Don't be too worried about putting out a ton of transfers. Just make sure you can afford it, right? We still have room in the wage budget. We actually have somewhat of a transfer budget now, and we're going to be making money because when we go back and we look at our transfer history and we look at the fees for some of these loans, as you can see, so we did have some normal transfers. When we go back down to these, though, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 loans that are showing up here. I know that we have other loans as well that are not showing up here because we've loaned out over 100 players. This thing's not going to keep up with us, in which we are making money off of the loan itself. That's the other idea that you have. It takes a while to get this set up. It'll take you a couple years in game, but eventually you'll get to the point where the players you have out on loan, these 100 whatever players, are going to start making money for you because the computer, the other teams are going to cover part of their wage budget or part of their wages, and they'll pay you extra money as well for the chance to loan them out and stuff like that. And so that's the other thing that you really want to pay attention to. If you do it right, you should have players who maybe are not quite good enough for your first team, who are always out on loan, and then when they hit age like 21 or 22, suddenly you'll get an offer in for them for millions upon millions of euros or pounds or dollars, whatever it is, and you'll be able to sell them off right away without having actually given them any game time or even having done anything to develop them at club yourself. So that's the whole idea behind this. That's the way ideally that it will work. Now, it's going to be tricky because what will happen right away is when these players come back in a year, we're going to have probably a little bit of bloat in the wage budget, and then we're going to have to try to do what we can to get the players out on loan again as quickly as possible. But if you have some patience and if you're willing to play around a little bit with the budget and stuff like that, what you'll see is that eventually you will be able to get this work sort of as a cycle, and then you get to the point where you have an unlimited transfer budget. You'll always have a positive bank balance, and then the game becomes really easy because all of the good young players end up at your squad. The other thing I wanted to show you really quick is sort of the way I set this up. So if you just focus on the recruitment focus and tell your coaches that you want players who are under 18, they're not going to find anybody, not your coaches, your scouts. So what I've had to do is I've had to use this scout priorities list instead. It's actually much smaller now than it once was, and a bunch of these guys are on my sort of more permanent wonder list, my more permanent short list. But as you can see, a whole bunch of these players are just Chinese players who are 15 and 16, mostly new gens. The way that I find them is pretty easy, right? Go over to World. I'm only looking for Chinese players because if there are players who are from other nations that are under 18, we can't sign them. They won't come over because of the rules. So go over to World, Nations, China, go to transfers, and then instead of all transfers, we're going to look at youth intake. We're going to have to go back to April to see this. And so when we go back here to April, we see all these players. I know that it's around April when they come in, and so every day I would go take that day's new intake players, go over to lists, add short list, put them on the trial list. Players who were willing to come in on trial, we look at right away. If they weren't willing, we would have the scouts look at them. And so because of that, all of these, I don't know how many players are on this list, but the whatever, like 1,000-something players here, all ended up going through either our coaches or our scouts so we could take a good look at them. Again, I was mostly concerned with personality and whether they were consistent and whether they had injury problems. If they're consistent, no injury problems, and have a somewhat good personality, I just signed them. And I figure, okay, we'll put them on the club, might as well. And then we get the sort of the machine rolling. So anyway, that's the way that you do it. That's how you have 200 plus transfers in a transfer window. That's how you loan out over 100 players. And that's how you make money doing it. So there you have it. And hope you have a good day. And I'll talk with you tomorrow. Bye.